All right, I've made videos, I think, about this before. Well, definitely, I know I've made videos about free will before, but about Sapolsky's book, Determined, I think I talked about, because I read David Lawrence's book, Debunking Determinism, and I read that, I don't know, probably about a year ago now, where he's sort of critiquing the ideas of Sam Harris and Robert Sapolsky, and I read that book instead of actually reading Sapolsky's book because I'd already read Sam Harris's book a while back, figured Sapolsky's was going to get to the same basic points, and he did. But I did finally get around to reading Sapolsky's book. I typed up just a quick response to the book. And I will say I skipped a lot of the research stuff because I don't care. I'll just grant him the research. Will say, oh, research is good. I find it boring, all the sciencey stuff, but the more philosophical implications of it is what this is really more a response to. The determinist, particularly the politically motivated moralizing one, cannot help but undermine his own philosophy. Sapolsky insists ad nauseam that people lack moral responsibility due to a lack of free will. Yet he seems to have no control, ironically, over his moralizing. For example, he clearly has animosity towards conservatives, white people, and men, the consistent targets of his judgments and disdain. He invokes race regularly, even when the subject matter he discusses has no obvious connection to race, emphasizing that some scientist or philosopher was white, or referring to someone as a dead white man when it has no clear relevance to the issue being discussed. I couldn't help but wonder why the encouragement for empathy for the serial killer, but not the conservative. Yet we were supposed to trust Sapolsky, who admits to being a biological robot and nothing more, about how we ought to live our lives based on his revelation of our lack of ability to control how we live our lives. By his own admission, every bit of analysis from Sapolsky was predetermined, and like everyone else, Sapolsky has the bias that his analysis of any given situation is the right one. Why would he have confidence in his conclusions aside from this bias? He's just a robot, and all robots think they are right. He can't prove that his IQ or any other measure of intellect or rationality is higher than those with different beliefs. This does not mean that I believe in free will. I do generally lean towards determinism with a dash of agnosticism on the matter. However, I do not believe that any statements can be made, at least any rational ones, about how we ought to live, based on a realization that we have no ability to control how we think or behave, all of which is a matter of trillions upon trillions of variables completely out of our hands. And with that in mind, I will acknowledge that I have no choice but to generally engage with the world in a way that looks like I believe in free will, regardless of dismissing the notion of free will when participating in a philosophical discussion. With this deterministic philosophical absurdity in mind, and the negative feelings people have about the idea of completely lacking free will, Sapolsky might do a disservice to some of the ideas that he promotes that I think are worthy of serious consideration. It seems almost too obvious that at minimum people have far less agency than society generally assumes. Luck, genetics, and environment do seem to rule the day. Revenge is probably overrated in the long run, and more empathy for those who suffer, which is everyone with a pulse, even those we find to be the most despicable, even those who disagree with us politically. Empathizing with those who suffer might not be a bad idea. Even from a purely selfish perspective, we never know where our luck will take us, and we are likely not as far removed from those we condemn as we might imagine. But without free will, you will either find what I have said compelling, absurd, or somewhere in between, not based on your own agency or particular talent at analyzing, but based on the inputs and the outputs of a biological robot, that you automatically assume is less compromised than this one.